How exactly are bombs defused? Do real-life bombs have to be defused in the ultra-careful is it the red wire or blue wire way we see in movies, or barring something like a remote detonator or dead man's switch, is it as easy as just simply pulling out cutting all the wires at once? Former 89 DEOD here. There is a lot of variables when it comes to rendering safe a bomb. In the simplest terms, separation of the firing train is the goal. Removing initiator from the main explosives. The process of actually doing this is greatly complicated by what you are rendering safe and where you are rendering it safe. Generally speaking though, if you have a single initiator, then removing and cutting is how you do it. Obviously, there are many ways to do this, and by hand is the very last option. Disclaimer: I neglected many aspects that would be considered. Strangely enough, non-professionals who make bombs do not follow any particular color convention. Nor do they include really obvious red countdown timers. Bombs in movies are gadgets created for an effective blackmail, designed to be found and still remain protected against tampering. For that reason, they have codes and timers and tons of stuff. Normal military ones are not elaborate in that way, with at most a couple layers of protection anti-tip device, against being lifted or messed with. I should add, if you want to get an idea of what the British Army did in the field in Afghanistan, try to find a series called Bluestone 42. It is a comedy, but it had a lot of input from real bomb disposal soldiers, so the action tends to be realistic. Note that unlike what was depicted in Hurt Locker, it is very much a team effort. The actual disarming may be done by a robot. The UK had a lot of experience with these from Northern Ireland, but very often a person who is the officer who does the disarming. Unlike most units, they don't tend to be hierarchical, with any of the team advising the officer and warning of problems. A lot of the time for improvised explosive devices, they simply evacuate the area and blow it up with another bomb. If there is mercury switch and you knock it over, you risk detonation just by inspecting it, and you really have no clue until you take a look. The same is done for unexploded ordnance often, like dud bombs and artillery shells. Sampling knocking into them can occasionally unjam the firing mechanism, allowing it to detonate. Of course, there are ways to defuse explosives and render them safe that don't involve blowing them up, but I wouldn't know much about that. Many explosives consist of a detonator and an explosive material. The easiest way to defuse a bomb is to separate the detonator from the explosive material, because materials like C4 or potassium nitrate cannot be detonated with a spark alone. So a smaller explosive that can be spark activated is used to initiate that explosion and lets whoever set it up to control the explosion. In the case of things like landmines or other primed explosives, things wired to blow up if they are disturbed rather than waiting for a detonate signal, the safest way is to just shoot it or otherwise blow it up in a controlled and safe manner. I once did some work for a company on a product that screened out electromagnetic RF signals that might trigger a device. The product consisted of a series of analog oscillators creating electromagnetic interference across a wide frequency range that was transmitted along a cable to a canopy, rather like an umbrella, that would sit over the device. The idea is that the noise prevents an RF trigger signal from either a transmitter or mobile phone from being received by the device. Bombs are defused in two ways. Not counting exploding on the spot. Either you know the bomb and you know what to do. You see the detonator, pull it from the explosive and hope it's not booby-trapped. Or you don't know and take another path. That path is usually to send in a robot and explode the trigger mechanism. Cutting wires is usually a bad option. Defusing a bomb could mean taking the fuse out. Bombs and fuses are typically handled separately until the mission is about to start. Disarming an explosive device rarely involves cutting blue-red wires, but may involve supercooling with liquid nitrogen or drenching with water. For an improvised bomb, typically, you need to remove the electrical power source to render safe. A major exception to this would be the use of a relay trigger, in which case removal of the power source would trigger that bomb. Although a thing to consider is that IEDs can still be very dangerous even with the designed trigger removed. Oftentimes, the main explosives are unstable and prone to partially or complete explosion. For government-produced munitions, U.S. doctrine provides procedures. What do you mean by real-life bombs? Military weapons bombs, mortars, artillery, etc. contain fuses that keep the weapon safe until fired. No need to defuse them. In many cases they can just be unscrewed and removed, although in bigger missile systems they're usually buried inside. If you're talking about terrorist movie bombs, anything could happen. At the root of it, though, one would need to disconnect the detonator from the high explosive, either by cutting wires or physically removing it. A clever bomb maker could make that very difficult, though. My answer is toward bomb with definition explosive object dropped from bomber aircraft. If for some reason they didn't blow up as expected, 100 of the time, they are moved to a safe location, get blown up. If the move part is not possible, the surrounding area is clear of people, then the blown up part happened. You just cut the white wire with the blue stripe. Not the white wire with the greenish-blue stripe. You have to cut that one after you cut the one with the blue stripe. But be very careful because in some light they look very similar. Also be careful not to cut the white wire with the bluish tint that has the bluish-green stripe. Not exactly. Every case is different. Usually charges are placed to blow up the bomb. If it's a really big bomb, X-rays can be taken to give the bomb team clues on how to disarm it. If the bomb has batteries, it can be frozen with liquid nitrogen to discharge the batteries so it can't blow up. Usually the method is to fight fire with fire, blow up the bomb with another bomb. Depends on the bomb, but the way it is shown in most movies is you basically prevent the blasting cap from going off, causing the destination. This is usually done by cutting power or removing the blasting cap. But again, this isn't universal, just the most common.